Örebro University. Matt's going to be talking about conversation and civic culture. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This is what it is about. Is this correct or not? And what I would like to do here today is not approaching this statement from a theoretical point of view and not from a more qualitative point of view, but based on some quantitative data. This is another way to approach this question about talk, conversation, and democracy. And this question of, is talk the soul of democracy? Some people say no, others say yes, and Peter typically say perhaps not the soul, but at least essential. Yeah. Is this a normative or an empirical question? Of course, you can discuss that. At least a number of scholars has moved into this question from a slightly normative point of view, and you're familiar with this deliberative democracy idea, and the debate, in a way, with some people approaching this idea from a more strict, perhaps a political scientist point of view, relating deliberation closely to political institutions, to the question of justification and the legitimacy of political decisions, etc. And also, you know, this discussion about deliberation really closely connected to a number of key qualities: openness, equality, symmetry, reasoned arguments, etc. And here is a quote from one scholar saying that deliberation can only properly attain these goals if the discussion reflects a number of normative characteristics, including equality and rationality. And then, on the other hand, we have Peter's and some other scholars' arguments trying to broaden, as I understand it, our understanding of what deliberation could be and also how it might be related to civic agency and democracy, and broaden it in a sense of questioning the kind of this distinction also between what is political and non-political, etc. So, and then we also have as a background, before moving into the quantitative data, of course, a huge number of studies, research, more in communication research, that has shown a clear connection between communication and, in this case, young people's involvement in civic agency. And especially these scholars, I would argue, have looked into the relation between communication and political knowledge, for example, and a number of studies have shown that there is a kind of a close quantitative measured relation between communication, especially in families with parents, and some output measures of civic engagement, particularly political knowledge. So, what we have tried to do is to building up a huge longitudinal study covering young people in the age of 13 to 30. It consists of about 5,000 individuals which will be followed over 7 years, and it is a multidisciplinary approach. People from political science, psychology, media and communications are working together, building up this longitudinal database in order to understand the mechanisms and processes through which young people develop different directions and styles of civic engagement. And what I would like to focus on here is the communication aspect and the talk about politics aspect as perhaps one key aspect in trying to understand these trajectories and from a socialization point of view. A few some information about this study. We've tried, as I said, to develop a socialization approach on talk and democracy. And the overall research question could be described as, what is the role of talk in processes through which young people develop relations to civic cultures and forms of civic engagement? And also, is talk a fostering activity, a predictor of civic engagement? And it connects back to Peter's statement in the beginning. And what we do is, and what is important for this study is that in this study is at least two things. One is that we are looking into young people's talk about politics, not only with parents but also with peers. And we also do this collecting data both from kind of online and offline context, if you can describe it that way. And also that we, inspired by Peter among others, develop a multidimensional approach on civic engagement, looking into a number of different dimensions of civic engagement. And the data I will show you is from the first wave of this longitudinal study. And it is respondents in the age of 13 to 14 and another group a bit older. It is from 10 schools in Örebro. It is a sample consisting of about 2,000 individuals, and there is a participant rate about 90%. And we also have connected to this data collection a parents' questionnaire where we collect also information from the kids or the young people's parents. And as you see, the participant rate is a bit lower, which is easy to understand, because that is a postal questionnaire and not based on the school. We have done a number of regression analysis, and we have what I will show you is a quite tough test, actually, of the importance of talk about politics when it comes to predict or looking into correlation in relation to a number of dimensions of civic engagement. It is quite tough in the sense that we have put in this model, I will show you, a number of control variables, etc. So we have looked into different forms of talk, and this is just to give you an idea of what we measure. We have measured both non-political talk and political or /civic talk, and this is some examples of how the questions are asked in these questionnaires. And we also look into, we could go more in detail into this, but I would like to come to the results and discuss the results instead of doing this. We also look into what we have a measure of what we call news mediation, and that is actually to what extent peers and also parents talk with the kids about what they have seen in the news, giving them ideas and suggestions of looking into specific or watching the news together with them, etc. These are an overview of the civic engagement, the output measures, so to say, in this analysis. And as you can see, we have looked into what I understand as 4 key dimensions in Peter's civic culture approach. It's about knowledge, it's about values, it's about practices, and it's also about what could be understood as identities. The identity concept is perhaps a bit more problematic, because what we have measured here is how young people express their interest in political questions, but also actually some more emotional aspects of their relation to politics. this is just a few examples of how these how these output measures are covered with some concrete questions, partly in relation to attention to political information and also in relation to this public expression. So I can answer questions about this later on if you would like to have more information. So let's go into, this is the only table I will show you. And I will just do a few observations in relation to that and then move into the conclusions. Okay. So here you have, this is a regression model with a number of control variables. Then there is a block with questions about talk with parents, and then there is a block with talk with peers. So, and then a number of examples of dimensions of civic engagement. Not all of them, but some of them. So a few observations. We can see that parents' education predicts knowledge, but not actually the other dimensions of civic engagement. So parents' education seems not to be that important. Parents' interest in politics does not predict most of the outcomes. News consumption is important, as previous research has shown. Political talk with parents is significantly correlated with two of the outputs. And I will also say that when we do a model not including peer talk, the parents' talk also is significantly correlated with actually all the dimensions, but not in this really, where we have put in so many factors in the same model. But most interestingly, peer talk, the talk with friends about politics, is significantly related to all the dimensions except knowledge. Of course, we cannot talk about cause and effects in this model. That will be possible for us to do when we have the longitudinal data, but that is not the case. It will be in 1 or 2 years. So, what is the result? Some results. Talk about politics and social issues, but not talk in general, is significantly in this study related to all dimensions of civic engagement. The contribution of political and civic talk on interest, political interest, is interestingly, I think, significant, even though the corresponding parent measure is included as a control variable. So even if we in the model put in parents' interest in politics, still the talk factors add some really significant to understand the different dimensions of civic engagement. And perhaps, as I said, most interestingly, political and civic talk among peers have great importance beyond talk with parents. It is crucial also, as a result, we can see the result of this study, that it is also very crucial to study different dimensions of civic engagement. I mean, you cannot just study political knowledge, young people's political knowledge as an output variable, and then think that this is the result will be the same if you put in other dimensions of civic. They kind of are related in different ways. And we can also see that we, for example, have a negative relation actually between the knowledge variable and the public expression variable. So these seems not to be correlated. Yeah, that's fine. So it makes sense to build up models including different dimensions of civic engagement. That is a clear kind of indication from these very preliminary. So the next step. Our analysis clearly indicates that there are different styles of civic engagement, forms of involvement, anchored in different socialization processes. The significance of talk among peers indicates not only horizontal socialization processes, but also that young people are active in